Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Dr. Laurie Betito. Tonight, our regular monthly feature that we call Dating Dilemmas. We're going to talk about the Casanova Complex as well as safer sex in the older generation, those of you 60 plus back into the dating game. And tonight, I'm joined, as usual, for our Dating Dilemma feature, Frank Kermit, who is a dating coach, seduction and dating coach. We'll find out about that a little bit later as well. He's of franktalks.com. He's the author of several books. If you are single and you have questions about dating, about dating players, which is really something we're going to talk about as well, about safe sex, about using protection, about dating in older generation, meeting people, how to be successful, etc. Tonight's the night. 514-790-0991. You can also text your message at 514-800. Frank, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Laurie. It's great to be back.
So, okay, we're talking about tonight something very important, which is older, well, not just older women, but older individuals who are back into the dating game. I don't know what the figures are for how many people are single later in life, but I know there's an awful lot, either through divorce, through widowhood. I have met many women in their 60s plus who are questioning, how do I go about doing this dating thing? They're doing the online dating thing, which I find very interesting, but they're out of the loop. You know, maybe it's been 40 years since they were on the dating scene, and 40 years ago, I'm not sure how much safe sex they had to think about. And just trying to get that message out, I think, is really important because the rate of STIs is climbing in the 50 plus.
That's right. Seniors are having sex, senior sexcapades. They're having a wonderful time. They're having very satisfying sex lives, but they're bringing in some old attitudes which just don't apply anymore.
Okay, let's talk about what some of these attitudes are, because I think they interfere with the safer sex practices.
Exactly, because the majority of seniors don't use condoms. The first attitude is that, well, if they can't get pregnant, they don't really need condoms. And condoms protect more than just unwanted pregnancies.
Right, so that's a thinking that I can't get pregnant, therefore what the hell do I need to protect myself? But if you look at the statistics, that's the scary part is if there was a study done about women ages 58 to 93 who were dating and sexually active, 60% hadn't used a condom. So more than half will engage in sexual activity and not protect themselves.
That's right. I remember during my my player days and my fun days, whenever I dated a woman who was past menopause, condom use really was not an issue. It was not something that they ever brought up. I would be the one to bring it up and say, maybe I should use a condom. And the general response would be, oh, you don't really need to do that. Because the idea really, their main focus, can I get pregnant? If I can't get pregnant, it's a non-issue. Whenever we brought up the topic of sexually transmitted diseases, and this seems to be a general belief amongst older people, sexually transmitted disease, that's something that soldiers get when they come back from war.
Is that ever old?
Because they were with the prostitutes over on the other side of the ocean. We're not in that, we're not in that group of people who are at risk.
I don't know. Do you really? Sometimes I find it hard to believe that those misconceptions are still out there, especially with the exposure we have today of talking about sexuality more openly and, being able to, they've got to hear things, read things in the paper. There's articles about what's happening in, with AIDS, for example. 10% of all new AIDS cases in 50 plus adults.
And that's
50 and older plus adults. So 10%, we didn't see that a whole long time ago. So why, you got to ask, why are you not protecting yourself? Why is this not an issue? Why don't you know about AIDS? Why don't you know about other things that you can catch?
Well, think about it. When they were sexually active in their youth before they got married or into long-term relationships, what did they know about AIDS at that time?
They just knew about the clap.
Exactly.
That was the thing. You don't want to get the clap.
And when AIDS came up, what was the one label it got? Well, that's the gay disease.
Right.
So if you're straight, you're not at risk. And don't forget, it's very comforting to believe that you are not at risk. You see people now, even young people today, sometimes they just don't have the cognitive understanding that, look, if you have sex, you're putting yourself at risk.
Right.
And you can justify it all you want. Well, you know, didn't you do a lecture on teenage sexuality where some of the teenagers were saying things like, well, I know I can't get pregnant because I've had unprotected sex for X number of months now and I haven't gotten pregnant yet.
Right. Or I know I can't get pregnant the first on the first time, so I don't really need to protect myself.
Exactly. So people will tell themselves whatever they need to tell themselves to feel safe.
I just wonder, it's interesting that if we look at the reasoning behind, I think it's a little different because the teen lack of condom use, they use it more than older people, but which is surprising. I mean, the older 50-plus crowd. But the reasons for them not using condoms has usually to do with this cognitive underdevelopment at that point, that because they think they're invincible, it won't happen to them, they don't think through the consequences. But when you're older, you do think about consequences, or you should think about consequences. So I'm not sure that it's that same feeling of not, being invincible at that point.
Maybe there's also, and none of the studies seem to have covered this, there might be an issue that maybe they're not fully cognitively aware. And maybe it's not just an issue of denial. They just aren't thinking through.
I think it's
this.
education. I think more than the cognitive, because I think they're perfectly cognitively developed, but I think they're lacking the education. And I think we need to do more to educate older individuals about safe sex instead of always talking about safe sex as a teen thing and drumming the message to teens rather than focusing on a population that right now is at higher risk than probably teens are.
That's exactly
for sexually
right.
transmitted diseases.
And this is one of the paradoxes, because in all the studies that have been done that I've had the opportunity to read, there is a paradox going on. Older people tend to feel that their doctors should be the ones to bring up any sort of issue with sex. However, most doctors, when they're with an older person, aren't going to bring up the issue of sex.
Right. They're not going to say, so how's your sex life? It doesn't. Some doctors do, I have to say. Some doctors really do that as their regular screening stuff, but a lot don't. You're listening to Dating Dilemmas tonight. We're talking about safer sex in the older generation. We're just wondering if you've ever been with someone, if you're 60 plus or 50 plus, who refused to wear a condom or didn't ask you to wear a condom. Would like to know your thoughts on that at 514-790-0991. You're listening to Passion on CJAD 800.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. How do you make your sex life with a new lover unique? How do you give her experiences that she will remember for years to come? What are the rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover? How do you make up for lack of sexual experience or skilled expertise? How do you make sure she is still thinking of you, even when other guys are hitting on her? Or is she on a date with someone else? This program has those answers and more, including an emotional needs analysis of these sexual experiences you are going to enjoy with your new lover. The rules for the first 10 times you have sex with a new lover. Buy this program now at franktalks.com.